Welcome to the inaugural episode of Insights Exchange, OSL's flagship video series. We are thrilled to kick things off with an exceptional guest. Today we are diving deep into the world of blockchain and digital assets with Evan Auyang, Group President of Animoca Brands. Hi Evan, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
My pleasure to be here.
And I know your career path is quite interesting, from finance to public service and now to a forefront Web3 with Animoca Brands. What sparked your interest in blockchain technology and what drew you to Animoca Brands' vision of digital future?
Well, so interestingly, if you tie sort of my career with what led me to where I am today, it's kind of like, I would like to say this all sort of planned out, but I always knew that I was very interested in business in general. When I graduated from college, I wasn't exactly clear what I wanted to do, so I started with finance because I was coming back to Hong Kong. I felt that finance was where everybody started, where my friends are, so I wanted to learn the basics of it. But after that, what I wanted to do was to do something broader, so I went into management consulting. I got my MBA first because I didn't know anything about finance, and I got into management consulting. I was at McKinsey for 8 years, and then I joined KMB, which is what you talked about in terms of public service, right? It's a for-profit bus company. Mm-hmm. Now that is my first executive job because as a management consultant, what essentially happened was that I thought that I was smart, right? And knowing what to do in businesses, but it's all on the analysis side, not really on the execution side. It's really on the advisory side. So KMB was a Common Motor Bus Company, which is a for-profit bus company. It was actually a company that is about frontline staff, right? And it's about serving the public, right? And that's where you put your analytical skills into bear and actually doing corporate leadership in the frontline organization, right? Now, that experience is the first executive experience that I have that allowed me to sort of, put all my knowledge in finance and sort of business knowledge into practice, right? Now, the interesting thing is that if you look at sort of where Web3 is, I'm going to actually tell you that doing Web3 is actually public service, right? It's exactly the same. The reason is that this is the third iteration of the internet, right? If you look at sort of my first executive experience, there's another one which is GOG in between, which is running a international organization, which all brought me to then Animoca. My experience brought me to Animoca at this point. The fact that running buses for profit, but you can't be extractive to your community and the traveling public is the ethos that you have to bring to Web3, right? So I knew founder Yatzil, and I knew him to be a purposeful leader who wants to build something to last, right? It's not just about, hey, let's go get the company IPO and then everybody makes money, return money to shareholders, we're all happy in return. It's not the purpose. So when I sort of talk to him, we know our DNA is very different. We're very different people, right? He's always been an entrepreneur. I always admire entrepreneurs. I felt that when we talked about where Animoca was going, he was saying, oh, we need to scale, we need to bring people in. So it's sort of like, hey, we're very complementary together. Why don't we come in and, why don't we work on this together? And then maybe we can scale the company, right? Because it was very investment-led, it was very much founder-led, and then, it was growing very, very rapidly. And getting the blockchain about doing this public service element of it is very, very interesting because how do we build online communities, right? Because it's no longer about data that we are creating that is unique only to our organizations. We're creating data in such a way and sharing in such a way that it's good for the community. Because if the community doesn't give a certain NFT or certain token its value, it will be worthless. Right? A token is a representation of a risk-based entrepreneurial effort, right?
Yes.
So when you actually launch a token or launch projects, what it essentially means is that, hey, if the community buys into it and this is valuable, it becomes an economy of its own, right? So that is why, sort of, when you look at it, it's like, hey, how does your career lead yourself to blockchain and all that? Now, every time I change my job, right, I seem to have changed career, right? But if you chain it all together, so from finance to management consulting, which got me ready for my first executive job at KMB, and then at GLG, which is I ran Asia Pacific, and then I ran international, the whole international footprint, and then Animoca is sort of like a step-by-step, challenge to my most challenging job I've ever taken, which is a fast-moving, super exciting industry where we are a leader in this space, right? And what better job can you possibly get at sort of like when you've accumulated in your career, so many years of experience to do something that is so new, that's so shaping with a leader, right? So that's sort of the journey that I felt that I've taken.
That's very inspiring. How has this wealth of experience influenced your leadership style at Animoca Brands, especially in navigating the fast-moving Web3 space?
Well, I mean, my leadership style and experience has a lot to do with both successes and failures of what I have learned, right, in the past, right? When I entered KMB, again, my first executive experience, I felt that I could see the issues very easily, right? Oh, we're doing well on this, we're doing less well on this, and then I was also able to see certain blockers in terms of people of the company. Why are we not doing well here can always be explainable by governance, by leadership, and the style of that particular leader as well. Now, what I did initially at KMB is very interesting towards my learning as to how I became an overall leader, because a smart management consultant knows what to do, but may not know how to construct a team in the best way possible without that experience in order to move things forward. So I was basically being the master of task delegator, if you will, right? Meaning that I formed many different teams, but I was actually the one driving all the work, right? So I had, at any one point in time, I have about 30 to 40 initiatives, right? That's all driven by me, and I had all of them, right? And not only do I get people to do stuff like delegating tasks, I was actually leading every piece of work and defining how it ought to be done. And I do have like weekly or bi-weekly meetings with everyone, right? And so I was like, I was doing basically all of the stuff I was driving myself, right? All the change I wanted in the company by myself. And what I found out of that is that is sort of what you call in Chinese. It's kind of like you do 100% of the work and you get half of the results, right? So yeah, it's like exactly. That's the way I sort of look at it, right? And kind of like, why is that? It's because you don't focus on the people, right? Leadership is ultimately about putting the right people in the right boxes and creating the right incentives for that team to thrive. And you don't actually need to just direct every single thing. It's actually bad return on ROI, right? Your time ROI, because you actually, an executive is, first of all, it's very lonely as a job, right? Because you can sort of see things that other people don't. And secondly, your time, how you allocate time, is tremendously important, because you choose to spend time on this rather than that, your organization might suffer in some ways, right? So ultimately, one thing that I did learn, and there was feedback given to me by the board as well. Hey, focus on changing up the organization. If you don't think that is something, these are the people you can work with. But I looked around me at the time in the bus company. People have been around for many years. I didn't know I could do that, right? Is that the thing to do? Is that the right thing to do? What about their careers and all that? But at the end of the day, the most important thing is not about just people per se. It's about the purpose of the company, because you're trying to deliver a service, right, to the public at the time. Same with Animoca, right? It's about an organization change you bring about in creating the right structure or infrastructure to execute in a way that allows you to be a leader, right? So therefore, my next executive career, I didn't make the same mistake, which is kind of like, you look around, you're kind of like, okay, who are the people who could be sort of like, who would stay to be sort of like the next generation of leaders? What are gaps, right? And what are some of the cultural aspects of people that are not going to fit anymore, and they have to go. And by the way, I adopted the philosophy of sort of like, it's better for people to not stick around than for them to stay around if they don't fit. And it's bad for the company, it's bad for them, right? Because they'll just end up being very negative, and then it's like, why, you know, why, and all that stuff. So Animoca, obviously, one of the first things that we have to do is scale the company. But it's not about necessarily getting rid of people. It's really not about that. It's about bringing in key executives who would then be able to lead in a way that is along the values of what we're trying to build and are smart enough to navigate the storm, right? So you can't get people who are, you know, who necessarily, quote unquote, who are very conservative. You have to have people with experience, but also risk tolerance, right? You have to have a very, very high tolerance of ambiguity, ultimately, right? In order for that to happen. So my style, ultimately, I'll describe it as this, right? You got to find the right talent. You got to put them in the right places, right? And you have to create a culture of teamwork, especially at top team level, to be very transparent and trusting, right? You have to spend a lot of sort of time together, right? And the time together is not just about solving problems, right? You also have to express your emotions, right? Yeah. Now, one thing that is very interesting about, especially, you know, for us in this industry, it's actually very male-dominated, right? And I would say in a way that is maybe not that great, but we all know one thing. And as I learn leadership, one thing that is also hidden within all of us are actually our emotions, and we hidden below the surface a lot, right? But that drives you so much. So what you're trying to do as a leadership team is you try to surface that emotions, especially with each other, so that you have that trust, right? And if you don't know the motivations behind why this person is doing certain things, you always second guess. Yeah. So what do, right? You surface it. You say, hey, I observe these behaviors. May I ask you, what are you thinking? What are you know, are you uncomfortable with something? And you have these conversations with them one-on-one, and maybe when you have the trust, you have to do it as a group. And that high trust with what we have formed an executive committee. Again, you know, Yat as a founder, you know, there are several of us, or 6 of us in the executive committee. It's very, very high trust. And I can tell you, the people that we have in the executive committee are absolutely world-class people. But at the same time, we have very high trust, and we're very different at the same time. We definitely don't agree on a lot of things, so we debate, and we even yell at each other. But we mean when we yell at each other, we mean a very, very, you know, we're very, very meaning and very intentional about it. So I'm very emotional about it. I'm very, very frustrated with that. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to listen to that if you don't come to understand my perspective. And, you know, and then we're like, okay, I challenge you on this. This is not the right perspective. I look at it from that perspective. And then you work it through. But you got to get to the point where you are speaking the top of your mind and your emotions in a way that if you're not feeling that the other person is collaborative, you have to be able to get that feedback. So there is 6 of us in the executive committee, and there's about 16 of us on what I call the operating committee, which is a next layer of leadership. And that leadership also has to spend time together for us to have that trust, right? So for me, it's about building that trust, making sure everybody is actually know what they're delivering, and then with that joint commitment, then we can deliver and also navigate a very, very fast-moving industry, right? Mm-hmm. Even just looking at Animoca and how we have transformed ourselves, right, from when I joined in 2021 to today, it's like quite a different company in terms of DNA, in terms of business focus and all that, and that's a must for a Web3 company anyway. Right? Unless you're an exchange business, which is also very, very steady, right? You know, you have to constantly change. This is an environment that is constantly changing. Right? I actually mean that as a joke. I'm sure that exchange environment changes a lot as well.
Correct. That's very well said. Evan, we know you've been with Animoca Brands for some time now. Can you share your journey with the company so far?
Yeah, so it's kind of a wild journey. It's like a roller coaster in a lot of ways, right? So you saw the industry going up and down with FTX blow up, and then Hong Kong went into Web3 big time. We went sort of like all consumer, and then while moving towards more institutional and doing more asset management, doing more investing. So it's very, very, like the journey is very, very interesting from that perspective. When I actually came into the organization, the space was so hot, right? Animoca as a name was so hot. It's all about fundraising. I did a lot of stuff myself, and there wasn't really a team around either myself or Yak at that point, right? So one of the first things that I really did have to do, rather than sort of like, doing everything myself, was to make sure I get the team together, right? The finance team, like, somebody, running business, operations, running projects. We're doing a lot of investments, maybe not a ton of process even at that time, right? But it was okay because things are fast moving, and then you just do what you have to do, right? But handling investors, flying around, meeting people, being on pitches, doing fundraising was part of what I had to do, right? But the journey of Animoca from sort of like just a mobile gaming company into a what has been sort of like what you call an app store focused company into a blockchain focused gaming company, it already itself is a transformation because the DNA has to change, the engineering team has to change, right? And then what you have to do is to, from that success, you sort of watch the market and how it reacts, and you sort of like the NFT gaming space was very hot, and then additional thematics became hotter. And then as you build an ecosystem, because we were, when I joined, we have 150 investments, and then we expanded now to about 550. Our ecosystem has become much larger, so opportunities afforded to us is also a lot wider. And therefore, we no longer need to only focus on gaming as well. As we pick up those skills, we are then able to get ourselves into other areas of Web3, which we have skills for, right? They need different teams as well, and you can also build teams that are from headquarters able to run their own projects, right? So at this point, we have three pillars of our company. Right? We have the business building side of things, which is really around our key projects run by headquarters, and then we have our advisory business, which is really about doing digital advisory, doing token advisory for projects that are in our ecosystem or outside ecosystem, because we can pretty much reach anyone within the network, within the Animoca network, and anyone in Web3. And now asset management business, which is our original investment business, is the third pillar, right? So the original gaming focus, while it's still there, we're still very heavy gaming part. We're also a company that is now into asset management, into advisory, and then into business building, right? So the DNA that you need is completely different from just an investment team, from sort of just a gaming team that can build games, right? So the hiring people, the talent that you put under the organization and get all the company aligned to work and execute got us to where we are today.
Yeah, it's just as you said, Animoca Brands has evolved from mobile gaming to blockchain gaming, and now serves as a diverse leader in Web3. As the company expands, how has Animoca Brands approached to digital assets and emerging technologies?
Well, we always want to be in the cutting edge, right? We always want to be a little bit innovative and on the edge of what is possible, right? So when we entered blockchain gaming, the premise of it actually made a lot of sense to us, but the market wasn't quite there, right? Yeah. So we wanted to be ahead of the game. If you think about the how many gamers there are, which there are 3 billion, and how much time is spent on gaming, which is quite a lot, yes, right? Within those, there are 3 billion gamers. I mean, I actually grew up in gaming, so I know how much time. I'm actually a heavy user, much more ahead of my friends in terms of gaming. I probably played between 70-80% of all the new games out there at one point in time, right? When I was younger and had more time. So I knew that when you are online and interacting with friends or a network of people you don't know, you're creating a lot of data, right? And all of that value is actually not accrued to you, right? And seeing that and being ahead of times, right? We believe that if you're able to own your assets and own the fruits of what you put in as your entertainment time, it actually means something. It's transformative, right? So that's sort of the first, right? As we look into it, then you have many thematically important themes that you go after, which is decentralized finance. There's DeFi Summer when I entered the company, and that is really transformational finance overall. And we believe that's the infrastructure that would be allowing blockchain technologies to flourish because of the investment component. So we did build a digital asset team because of the various investments that we've made, because of advisory that we have. We actually have hundreds of tokens coming into the treasury, and we have no way of managing them besides, at the time, putting on different wallets, when do you hold, when do you acquire more, when do you sell. We need a professional team to do it. And over time, we then built, high frequency trading systems. We're able to do market making as a service. We're able to run node operations. We then professionalize the company in that way. So we're also pushing Antelope ahead of what the industry was necessary. Otherwise, we're relying on the market makers and all that. Nowadays, when we do innovation, we are now, there are two of the projects that we're now doing. We also believe it's a little bit ahead of the curve. One is Mochaverse, which carries our name, which is decentralized identity, right? Essentially, when you interact with the rest of the internet, right, in the future, you accrue reputation through your ID system, right? And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to onboard, the next billion gamers and Web3 users, internet users who will migrate from Web2 to Web3, where sovereign data actually means something. We believe that layer of infrastructure by using reputation, right? Your accruing reputation score as you interact, and how you purchase tokens, purchase NFTs, where do you sell, where you buy more, would accrue itself to a certain reputation that gives a persona of how you are. And it's so important for all of us to realize that part of what we own in terms of our assets for ourselves is not just how much wealth we have, but how much intangible reputation that we have, where you graduated from in terms of schools, which societies you belong to, which clubs you have, where you show up, all your social identifiers, clothes we wear, do you carry, what car you drive, they're all social identifiers, right? And this is becoming more and more important as we spend across the world 6.5 hours of time on the internet, where these social identifiers are actually just given to you by Facebook, by Google, and all that. But in the future, through Mochaverse, you would then be able to carry that portable identity as a way of how you represent yourself digitally, right? So we believe that innovation is very critical to us, and that's sort of one innovation project. And Open Campus is decentralized identity from an education perspective. So that's decentralized education in a way. We believe that the curriculum, as we see today, school curriculum and learning, has not really evolved over time, right? So how do you empower teachers and creators to create curriculum and create learning in a way that is more modern, right? As we all know, in school, and for those of us who have children, the time spent in school is really not the crux of the learning of this person's journey, of our kid's journey. We all know that. For instance, what have you studied in your school when you graduated that has prepared for your job today, right? Versus how much you have learned actually on the job and from other people, and frankly, right now from AI, right? You don't know something, you ask AI, right? And there's something that went on last night in Korea that I wasn't sure about. What was all of that? You asked AI, right? There's something that was going on, there's unrest. So tell me more of this stuff. Tell me about, you can synthesize all the information, read information, and you're trying to understand both sides' perspective and all of that, right? The learning is completely different. How we learn today is very, very different from how we have learned in 1960s. So, I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, but for us, what's really important at Animoca is that we want to change the world through Web3, right? And for us to do that, we have to invest in projects that has an opportunity to actually change the world, right? We believe in something. The first conversation I have with Yat actually at his house at dinner. First time I met him, we talked about education, right? Specifically about how the traditional curriculum doesn't serve the needs of our kids and doesn't ready for them in the world. We're not even talking about tech, right? Technology, yes, is important and all of that stuff. But we're just talking about what the business world needs, what the civil society needs, right? How do you, even if you enter government, how do you make good policies? How is, if you're not a scientist, how is organic chemistry going to help you in your curriculum, right? That should now go maybe more into the graduate studies of it, right? Maybe, coding is really required. Maybe learning to write prompts is really important. Writing AI prompts is very important in your curriculum, right? So you have to constantly change it, right? So how do you reimagine things ultimately is what makes my job exciting and what makes Animoca exciting.
Yeah, as you say, the Web3 industry is rapidly evolving now. Tell us more about how Animoca Brands bring its expertise to create value in the 3 pillars you just mentioned: assets management and advisory services and institutional applications.
Yeah, so interestingly that you also talked about institutional applications, because we do see that there's a native side, which is very innovative, of Web3, which is where we're born from, and then there's an institutional side, which is always maybe a little step behind, right, to be very honest, but it's very careful in terms of how it evolves its infrastructure. That has a lot to do with finance and all of that, right? So on the native side, for us, how do we push ahead is that we do have an investment team that's talking to the most innovative projects all the time. They're out there all the time, right? Because we are, at most one degree of separation, right, from any project that is out there, because we build a name for ourselves so we can pick up the phone and call anyone or get an introduction if we want to, right? So we do look at things that are pretty cutting edge, like decentralized science. We do look at meme coins, right? Because it's part of culture, right?
Yes.
We do look at DePIN, right? And obviously DeFi is coming back in a very big way as well. And there are lots of other thematically important things that we look at, and everything is important to us because we don't dismiss anything as kind of like a fad or that's fraud and all that. And even though there are some activities out there that we kind of like, hey, that's kind of like suspicious and not great, we don't dismiss it. We kind of like study it, understand why, and understand the behavior of why, right? That gets us to innovation stage, right? And then for projects that we have convictions for, like decentralized identity, education, we just directly do and incubate those projects, right? For the institutional pillar, on the other hand, we are a good advisor to NEOM because we're trying to build them a sovereign blockchain, right? Because they are trying to build an AI-based city. We believe data governance of it needs to be governed by something that is more decentralized, and the future can be owned by the citizens, right? So we're working with them on that, and then we're running several POCs, proof of concepts, for the city to thrive in the future, because it's so futuristic. We can reimagine things. So we feel that that's a great partner to work with to test out some of our wild ideas as well, right? And they're very receptive to it. And then on the other side, institutional side, we also have a stablecoin that we're launching, which is with Standard Chartered Bank and Hawking Telecom. So the 3 parties we're launching a stablecoin as a JV structure under the HKMA licensing regime. We're part of one of the 3 parties in the sandbox, regulatory sandbox, and we believe stablecoin is already a proven use case, right? Be it cross-border payments, be it sort of like adoption of it in the Web3 world, which is very much proven by Tether and Circle. We believe that that's already a use case that we have, and we will look to partner with exchanges like OSL to make sure that there's adoption, right? Because it's so much more efficient, right? Atomic settlement, 24/7, always available. Why wouldn't we do this? Why do we have to pay for corresponding banking charges and all of that, right? So we also want to spur the institutional adoption side of things by seeing what are applications that are readily available and make sure they are adopted.
As we know, the Web3 industry is filled with opportunities, and with that comes its own challenges. What do you see as the biggest hurdles for the mainstream adoptions of institutional applications that is blockchain native?
So investing itself is already getting more and more institutional adoption, right? The one thing that is very interesting about technological adoption is really goes back to a very simple thing, which is UI UX, right? If it's a very simple user interface and a very seamless user experience, the adoption is there. Think about how much the iPhone has actually transformed all of us on mobile commerce in our lives, right? Just because you're able to pinch your screen, navigate with your fingers and all of that, you have essentially now put a computer in the palm of your hands, right? That's essentially what happened, right? And every several years, right, the size of what can be done on your laptop computer can be done on your fingertips, on your mobile device, right? It's just about that. In 2021, you create an account, you store seed phrases and all that stuff. Otherwise, your other choice is to work with centralized exchanges, which are unlicensed, right? By and large, unlicensed, right? So you're at risk of kind of like, what do you do, right? So institutional adoption ultimately is about either ease of use or licensing, right? And now in Hong Kong, you see several license exchanges, including OSL, right? That would, again, allow institutions and individuals who are more conservative about participating in this industry. Hey, how do I trade Bitcoin? How do I trade Ethereum and all of that? Through licensing, through that, then it's very easy for onboarding process and offboarding to then begin, right? That's how that gets done, and then you see more and more of this licensing activities going on, right? And with respect to user interface and user experiences, you can see a lot of account abstraction, right? You can sign in with Google now. It's very easy for that experience to happen, right? So that's really on the consumer side. On the institutional side, it's really about regulatory approval, isn't it, right? Because once the Bitcoin ETF has been approved, you can see how fast the Bitcoin has risen, right? Because of just institutional money. Again, if you look at an asset like Bitcoin, where you only know that there are certain supply available, and if there's diversification of assets that institutions or even wealthy individuals, family office, need to look into, it's an asset class that everybody believes cannot be ignored, right? So what do? Do you put 1%, 2% into it, 3% into it? Every percentile you put into it is trillions of dollars, right? Into an asset class that is emerging and that doesn't have that much supply. So imagine that if the first is Bitcoin and then Ethereum is next. What happens to the rest, right? As you build more applications that have consumers adoption, right? Be it stablecoin application, be it Solana, of all this fun stuff we're doing with memes and all of that, you will see blockchain ecosystems flourish, right? And the institutional money that ties into it is all adopted by the ease of that UI UX, which is, by the way, funny enough, for consumer side, via something as simple as an onboarding process through a wallet that's easy to use. On the institutional side, it's really via regulations. Right? So we do need that. And we also need domiciles like Hong Kong to continue to develop the right regulations so that onboarding is easy. At the same time, we also need large domiciles like the US to really actually regulate in the proper way.
And also on the flip side, what are the most exciting opportunities you see for Web3, especially here in Asia?
Asia is very blockchain friendly and very crypto friendly, right? In a lot of ways. So in a lot of ways, the center of gravity, right, actually has shifted on the consumer side due to sheer numbers from sort of like the Western markets more towards this side of the world. Interestingly, I'll even say that in China, there are lots of crypto curious and folks as well in there, right? But it's just that right now the ownership is not, trading is not allowed, but the ownership is not illegal, right? In that way, how do we get to the point where there's more adoption of that without the speculative aspect that China is worried about, right? So, but if you look at almost every part of Asia, right? Korea, Southeast Asia, many parts, like you look at Thailand, you go to the Philippines, right? You go to Indonesia, right? Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's all crypto nations,
Yes.
right? And because at the end of the day, they are, mobile phone adoption is very, very high. They've been used to political instability, and they're sort of like, in a lot of ways, they do look at the US dollar as a point of stability, but they also look at Bitcoin as a diversification, right? So if you sort of look at this part of the world and adoption and all of that, right? Gaming, huge gamers, half the gamers market is actually in Asia.
Yeah.
And if you look at sort of like application adoptions, some of the biggest players, of Axie Infinity at the time and now Pixels now, they are in Asia, right?
Yes.
So as our core audience. Now, I really feel that the innovation, a lot of it still comes from the US and other places as well. But consumers, a lot are here.
And all seriousness aside, we're going to move on a fun segment of this interview. We'll dive into 10 questions in 10 seconds.
Sure.
And no overthinking, just rapid fire answers.
Sure.
And this is the chance for the audience to get to know you more personally. Yes. So are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. Dog or cat?
Dog.
Coffee or tea?
Tea in the morning, coffee in the afternoon.
Favorite color?
Green.
Favorite celebrity?
I don't have one, sorry.
Okay. Favorite food?
Sushi.
Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Ethereum.
The last thing you said to your team?
Execute well.
How many percentage of your portfolio is in crypto?
40.
Wow. First cryptocurrency bought?
Ethereum.
Okay. So you really like Ethereum? Better than Bitcoin?
I don't have a lot of Ethereum. No, I wouldn't say I have a lot of it, but I have less Bitcoin than Ethereum. That's very clear this way.
All right.
No, I like Bitcoin a lot.
Okay, thank you, Evan, so much. It's a pleasure to have you here on Insights Exchange, and your journey and insights is truly inspiring. We can't wait to see how Animoca Brands continues to shape the future of Web3.
No, thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
For our viewers, stay tuned for more conversation with industry leaders. Don't forget to follow us for updates on the latest trends in digital assets and blockchain.